the empire's deadly reality. The night is warm, heavy with the smell of smoke and sweat. You wake not to silence but to noise. The city never truly sleeps. From somewhere beyond the cracked wall of your apartment, you hear the cry of a vendor already calling to early risers. The faint clatter of hooves echoes down the narrow street. Welcome to ancient Rome. Not the Rome of Hollywood films with marble columns and noble senators in pristine togas. This is the real Rome, a city of 1 million souls crammed into disease-ridden tenements, where life expectancy hovers around 30 years, where the water slowly poisons you, and where tomorrow is never guaranteed. This comprehensive guide will examine every aspect of why you, as a modern human, would struggle to survive even a week in ancient Rome. Drawing from archaeological evidence, historical texts, and modern scientific analysis, we'll explore the brutal realities that made Rome simultaneously the world's greatest civilization and one of its most dangerous places to live. Housing, the death trap called home. The insula, Rome's vertical slums. You live in an insula, a multi-story apartment building that houses 90% of Rome's population. The word insula means island, but there's nothing isolated about these structures. They're packed together so tightly that you can hear your neighbors breathing through the walls. The typical insula rises 5 to 7 stories high, each level cheaper and more dangerous than the one below. The ground floor is reserved for shops and tavernas, businesses that operate from dawn until well past midnight, ensuring constant noise. The second and third floors house middle-class families willing to pay premium rents for relative safety and shorter stairway climbs. The upper floors, your domain, are where the poor huddle in single-room apartments barely large enough to lie down in. The construction is a nightmare by any modern standard. Landlords, driven purely by profit, build as cheaply as possible. The ground floor might have stone walls, but upper floors rely on timber frames filled with rubble and mud brick. There's no steel reinforcement, no building codes, no safety inspections. The structure sways visibly in strong winds. Cracks spider across walls. The whole building leans slightly to one side, whether from poor foundation work or gradual settling. Nobody knows and nobody cares. The great orator Cicero owned insulae as rental properties. In his letters, he casually mentions that 2 of his buildings collapsed and a third was showing cracks. He wasn't concerned about the tenants who died. He was calculating the insurance money. The stairs are perhaps the most dangerous feature. Narrow, steep, and built from worn wood, they're more like ladders than proper staircases. There are no handrails. Romans considered them unnecessary. Each step has been polished smooth by thousands of feet, making them treacherously slippery. In the darkness, windows are small and few, candles expensive. You navigate by feel and memory. A single misstep sends you tumbling down into blackness. Falls are so common that they barely merit mention in historical records unless someone important dies. For ordinary residents, a broken leg or skull is just another statistic. And in ancient Rome, broken bones are frequently death sentences. Without proper medical care, infections set in. Without antibiotics, infections kill. Fire, the constant terror. Fire is the nightmare that stalks every Roman's dreams. The combination of wooden construction, oil lamps, cooking fires, and densely packed buildings creates a tinderbox ready to explode. Small fires break out daily, a knocked-over lamp here, an unattended cooking fire there. Most are caught early and extinguished with buckets of water. But regularly, fires grow beyond control. The Great Fire of 64 AD is the most famous, burning for 6 days and 7 nights, destroying 10 of Rome's 14 districts. Contemporary historians describe apocalyptic scenes. Flames leaping from building to building faster than people could run, entire streets becoming corridors of fire, citizens trapped on upper floors choosing between burning alive or jumping to their deaths. But that fire wasn't unique, just the most destructive. Historical records mention major fires in 6 BC, 27 AD, 36 AD, 64 AD, 69 AD, 80 AD, and 191 AD. Between major conflagrations, minor fires rage constantly. The Emperor Augustus established the vigils, a force of 7,000 freedmen serving as firefighters and night watchmen, because the fire problem had become existential. Yet the vigil's equipment is primitive: buckets, hooks for pulling down burning buildings, and hand-pumped water engines, siphons that spray weak streams. Their main strategy is creating fire breaks by demolishing buildings in the fire's path. If you live in one of those buildings, too bad. The vigils have authority to destroy any property to stop fires. Upper floor residents face the worst risk. Flames rise, trapping people above while escape routes below are engulfed. Windows are small and high off the ground. Falling 4 or 5 stories kills as surely as fire. Many victims die from smoke inhalation before flames reach them. Ancient sources describe finding bodies huddled in corners, overcome by fumes. After fires, a grim industry emerges. Scavengers pick through ruins looking for valuables: melted coins, metal fittings, anything salvageable. Speculators buy destroyed property at pennies on the denarius, then rebuild cheaply and rent at high rates. The most notorious was Marcus Crassus, one of Rome's wealthiest men, who built his fortune by arriving at fires with his private fire brigade. He'd offer to buy the burning building at a tiny fraction of its value. If the owner agreed, Crassus's men would fight the fire. If not, they'd watch it burn, then buy the land even cheaper. The roof, highest floor, highest risk. As a poor resident, you live on the top floor, the cheapest because it's the most dangerous. In summer, the sun turns the space into an oven, temperatures reaching 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, or higher. The tile roof radiates heat down. There's no insulation, no ventilation beyond your small window. You sweat constantly, sleep becomes nearly impossible, and dehydration is a daily battle. Winter brings the opposite problem. Cold winds whistle through cracks in walls and roof. Your single window, covered only by a wooden shutter, lets in freezing drafts. Heating is dangerous. Charcoal braziers provide warmth, but also produce deadly carbon monoxide. Every winter, families are found dead in their rooms, killed by invisible fumes from their heating fires. Water is a major challenge. There's no plumbing in upper-floor insula. That luxury is reserved for ground-floor businesses and the wealthy. Every drop of water must be carried up those treacherous stairs. Most residents make the climb once or twice daily, filling clay amphorae from public fountains. A filled amphora weighs 20 to 30 kilograms. Climbing 5 stories with that load is exhausting. The elderly and sick often go without adequate water. Rather than face the climb, this water shortage has cascading effects. Bathing at home is nearly impossible. Washing clothes becomes a rare event. Cooking is limited to dishes requiring minimal water. Dehydration, especially in summer, becomes a serious health threat. And then there's waste disposal. With no toilets in upper floors, residents have three options. Use the public latrines, a long walk down and back upstairs, especially difficult at night. Use chamber pots and carry waste down in the morning, or, most commonly, simply throw waste out the window onto the street below. The poet Juvenal, writing in the 1st century A.D., warns nighttime pedestrians, "Consider it a piece of good luck if you're only doused with the contents of a chamber pot when walking beneath apartment buildings. Windows raining human waste onto passers-by below is so common it's a standard subject of jokes and complaints. Some unlucky individuals are struck by entire chamber pots, ceramics shattered on heads, causing serious injury. Roman law technically prohibits this practice. The 12 Tables, 450 B.C., impose fines for injuring someone with thrown objects. But enforcement is impossible. Who can prove which window the waste came from? The practice continues unabated, and Rome's streets perpetually reek of human waste. Structural collapse. When buildings fall, the shoddiest construction and maximum height create predictable results. Buildings collapse. Not occasionally, regularly. The satirist Juvenal again captures the anxiety. Who at Rome can sleep? Only the rich can afford it. The rumble of carts in the narrow streets and the curses of stalled drivers would wake a deaf man or a drowsing seal. We live in a city propped up mostly by slender poles. This is how the landlord patches up cracks in the old walls, telling tenants to sleep peacefully, though the building is ready to tumble down on their heads. The Emperor Augustus, attempting to address the problem, limits insulae to 20 meters, 65 feet in height. Later, Trajan reduces this to 18 meters, 60 feet. But landlords ignore these regulations when they can, and even legally constructed buildings frequently fail. Poor foundations on soft ground, inadequate support beams, overloading upper floors with too many tenants, water damage weakening structures all contribute to collapses. Historical sources record numerous catastrophic failures. In 27 A.D., an amphitheater in Fidenae collapses during games, killing over 20,000 people. In 3 A.D., a firewatch station collapses, killing many vigils. The sources rarely mention smaller collapses that kill only a few people. These are too common to be newsworthy. When a building collapses, there's rarely warning, perhaps some creaking, perhaps cracks widening. Then suddenly, floors pancake downward. Residents are crushed instantly or trapped in rubble, slowly dying of thirst and injuries. Rescue efforts are minimal. No organized emergency services exist. Neighbors might dig through rubble looking for survivors, but often it's too dangerous. The building might collapse further. Legal liability is murky. If the landlord's negligence can be proven, he might face fines. But proving negligence is difficult, and landlords are usually wealthy enough to avoid consequences through bribery or legal maneuvering. Victims' families receive little or no compensation. It's just another cost of living in Rome. Privacy, the luxury you cannot afford. Privacy, as modern people understand it, doesn't exist in insulae. Walls are thin. Timber frames with rubble and fill do little to stop sound. You hear your neighbor's every word, every argument, every intimate moment. They hear yours. Secrets are impossible. Family life occurs in a single room. Parents, children, sometimes grandparents or other relatives all share one space. Meals are eaten, clothes are changed, sleep occurs. all in full view of each other. For married couples, intimacy requires waiting until children sleep, then remaining silent to avoid alerting neighbors. This lack of privacy extends to personal information. Everyone in the building knows everyone else's business. Who's working where, who's earning what, who's quarreling with whom, who's ill, who's pregnant, who's drinking too much. It's all common knowledge. Gossip spreads through insula like wildfire, and reputation is constantly under scrutiny. For women, this creates special vulnerabilities. Roman society is patriarchal and obsessed with female virtue. A woman seen talking too familiarly with a man who isn't her husband or relative becomes subject to vicious rumors. These rumors can destroy reputations and marriages and make a woman unemployable or unmarriageable. The only privacy most Romans ever experience is in death. Water, poison on tap. The aqueduct system, engineering marvel, health disaster. Rome's 11 aqueducts are justly famous as engineering masterpieces. They bring over 1 million cubic meters of fresh water daily from springs in distant hills, traveling through channels and over magnificent arched bridges. The Aqua Claudia, completed in 52 A.D., transports water from 69 kilometers away. The system supplies over 1,000 liters per person per day, far exceeding any city before the modern era. But this technological triumph has a fatal flaw: lead. The word plumbing comes from the Latin plumbum, lead. Roman engineers loved lead for water systems because it's soft, easy to shape and join, durable, doesn't rust, and relatively affordable. Lead pipes snake throughout Rome's underground infrastructure. Lead fittings connect channels. Some wealthy homes have lead tanks storing water. Even aqueducts, using stone channels, are sealed with lead. The Romans aren't completely ignorant of lead's dangers. Vitruvius, writing in the 1st century B.C., warns that water conducted through earthen pipes is more wholesome than that through lead. Indeed, that conveyed in lead must be injurious, because from it white lead is obtained, and this is said to be harmful to the human body. Some physicians advise against lead exposure, but the warnings are ignored. The engineering advantages are too attractive, and lead poisoning's effects are slow and subtle. Romans don't make the connection between their plumbing and the health problems plaguing society. Lead poisoning, the silent killer. Chronic lead exposure causes horrific effects that Romans experience but don't understand. Physical symptoms: 1, abdominal pain and cramping, called painter's colic even in Roman times, as painters use lead-based pigments. 2, constipation. 3, joint and muscle pain. 4, headaches and fatigue. 5, anemia. 6, kidney damage progressing to failure. 7, reproductive problems. Reduced fertility, miscarriages, stillbirths. Neurological symptoms: memory problems, difficulty concentrating, mood swings and irritability, tremors. Peripheral neuropathy, numbness in extremities. In severe cases, seizures, encephalopathy, death. Behavioral changes: increased aggression, impulsiveness, poor judgment, emotional instability. The wealthy suffer most severely because they have the most lead exposure. Beyond water pipes, they use lead vessels for cooking and serving. They consume sapa and defrutum, grape syrups boiled down in lead pots, as sweeteners in food and wine. The resulting lead acetate sugar of lead has a sweet taste that Romans find irresistible. It's added liberally to wines to mask sourness and to foods as seasoning. Some historians argue that lead poisoning contributed to Rome's decline by compromising the cognitive abilities and health of the ruling class. Emperors like Caligula, Nero, and Commodus exhibit behavior patterns consistent with heavy lead poisoning, erratic judgment, violent mood swings, cruel impulsiveness, progressive mental deterioration. Analysis of Roman skeletons and preserved tissues confirms widespread lead contamination. Roman aristocrats have lead levels in their bones 100 times higher than pre-industrial humans. Even poorer Romans show significant elevation, though less extreme than elites. Modern studies of Greenland ice cores reveal that atmospheric lead pollution during the Roman era was not surpassed until the Industrial Revolution. Lead smelting for plumbing, coins, and other uses releases so much lead into the atmosphere that the signal appears in ice thousands of kilometers away. Other waterborne threats. Lead isn't the only danger in Roman water. Despite the aqueduct's engineering brilliance, maintaining water purity is nearly impossible with Roman technology. Aqueducts are open channels for most of their length. Birds and animals drink from them and contaminate them. Dust and debris fall in. During heavy rains, runoff washes manure and waste into channels. Rome has no concept of water filtration beyond simple settling tanks. At distribution points, water sits in large tanks, castella, before being directed to public fountains and for the wealthy private homes. These tanks are breeding grounds for bacteria. They're cleaned irregularly, if at all. Dead rats, dead birds, and other flotsam accumulate. Public fountains, where most Romans get water, present more problems. The same spout serves everyone. People don't just fill containers, they drink directly, wash their hands and faces, sometimes wash vegetables. Cross-contamination is constant. A person with cholera or typhoid drinking from a fountain contaminates the water for everyone who follows. During summer's heat, fountains become particularly dangerous. Water sits warming in pipes and tanks, creating ideal bacterial growth conditions. Waterborne disease outbreaks spike during hot months. Waterborne diseases, the invisible killers. Romans suffer constantly from waterborne diseases, though they don't understand the mechanism. They know dirty water makes people sick, but attribute it to miasmas, bad air, rather than microorganisms. Cholera. Vibrio cholerae bacteria cause violent diarrhea and vomiting, leading to rapid dehydration. Without modern oral rehydration therapy, mortality reaches 50 to 70%. Cholera can kill a healthy adult within hours. Outbreaks in crowded Rome with poor sanitation are devastating. Typhoid fever, caused by Salmonella typhi. Typhoid causes prolonged high fever, abdominal pain, rash, and confusion. About 20% of untreated cases die. Those who survive often remain chronic carriers, shedding bacteria in feces and urine for years, continuously contaminating water supplies. Dysentery, both bacterial, Shigella, and amoebic, Entamoeba histolytica. Dysentery cause bloody diarrhea, cramping, and fever. Chronic dysentery weakens victims, making them vulnerable to other diseases. It's particularly deadly for children and the elderly. Hepatitis A. Viral infection causing jaundice, fatigue, nausea, and liver damage. Most adults survive, but it debilitates for weeks or months. Children often experience milder cases, but widespread infection stresses communities. Parasitic infections. Intestinal worms are almost universal in ancient Rome. Roundworms, tapeworms, and other parasites cause malnutrition, anemia, and digestive problems. Some grow meters long inside human intestines. Heavy infestations can cause intestinal blockages requiring surgery, usually fatal in this era. Analysis of ancient Roman sewers and latrines reveals eggs from multiple parasite species, confirming widespread infestation. Even wealthy Romans with better nutrition and housing harbor parasites. The Tiber, Rome's toxic lifeline. The Tiber River is simultaneously Rome's greatest asset and its most dangerous feature. It provides transportation, water power for mills, and a waste disposal system. It's also Rome's primary sewer. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer, empties directly into the Tiber. So do numerous smaller sewers. Waste from public latrines, baths, industrial processes, and street runoff all flow into the river. Slaughterhouses dump animal blood and offal. Tanners discharge toxic chemicals used in leather processing. Upstream from Rome, the river might be relatively clean. By the time it flows through the city, it's an open sewer. Yet poor Romans still use it for drinking water, when fountains are too far or crowded, for washing clothes, and for bathing. The Tiber floods frequently, about once every 20 years on average, with smaller floods more often. Floodwaters mix sewage with streets, homes, and wells. Waterborne disease spikes dramatically after floods. The river's marshes are perfect mosquito breeding grounds. Malaria, transmitted by Anopheles mosquitoes, is endemic in Rome. Summer and fall are particularly dangerous when mosquito populations peak. Malaria kills, but more often it chronically weakens victims with recurring fever cycles. Romans call malaria bad air, malaria, because it seems to rise from swamps. They're not completely wrong. The disease does come from swampy areas, but they don't understand mosquitoes are the vector. Various preventive measures, avoiding marshes, burning aromatic plants, wearing amulets, have little effect. Roman solutions that don't work. Romans try various methods to improve water safety, most ineffective. Settling tanks allow sediment to drop out of water before distribution. This removes visible particles but doesn't address microorganisms or lead. Running water. Romans believe running water stays fresher than still water. Fountains continuously flow, spilling into drains. This does help somewhat by preventing bacterial growth in standing water, but wastes tremendous amounts. Purification beliefs. Romans think some sources are inherently purer. Mountain spring water is considered healthiest. Unfortunately, it's just as contaminated once it travels through lead pipes and open channels. Wine and vinegar. Mixing wine or vinegar with water is extremely common. Pasca, vinegar water, is the standard drink for soldiers and laborers. Wine does have some antibacterial properties from alcohol and acids, offering minor protection. But it's not enough to eliminate serious pathogens. Boiling. A few medical writers recommend boiling water for the sick, which actually works. But fuel is expensive, and the advice isn't widely followed. Most Romans never boiled drinking water. The tragic irony is that Rome has the engineering capability to deliver tremendous quantities of water, but lacks the understanding to keep it safe. Citizens are slowly poisoned by the very infrastructure that's supposed to protect them. Food. Every meal a gamble. Street food. Fast, cheap, and deadly. Most Romans don't cook at home. Upper floor insulae have no kitchens. Fire risk in wooden buildings is too high. Ground floor apartments might have small cooking facilities, but fuel is expensive. Instead, most people rely on street vendors and thermopolia fast food restaurants. Thermopolia are everywhere. Over 150 have been excavated in Pompeii alone, suggesting thousands throughout Rome. They're simple establishments. A counter with large ceramic jars, dolia, embedded in it, containing hot food, wine, and other offerings. Customers order, pay, and eat standing or take food away. The typical menu includes pulse, a thick porridge of wheat or barley, the staple food of poor Romans. Bread, coarse, dark bread, sometimes days old. Olives, salted and preserved. Cheese, often strong-smelling and aged to avoid spoilage. Sausages, mystery meat in intestine casings. Fish sauce. Garum, the ubiquitous condiment. Wine, usually cut with water, often gone sour. Quality control doesn't exist. No health inspections, no hygiene standards, no refrigeration. Food sits uncovered, exposed to flies, dust, and whatever else blows through Rome's dirty streets. When food goes bad, vendors mask the taste with heavy spicing or garum. Meat is particularly dangerous. Butchers slaughter animals at dawn and sell throughout the day. In summer heat, meat begins spoiling within hours. By afternoon, flies cluster thickly on carcasses. Vendors shoo them away when customers approach, but the damage is done. Fly eggs and bacteria already contaminate the meat. Fish is even worse. Rome is kilometers from the sea. Fishermen catch their haul, pack it in salt, and transport it to Rome, a journey taking days in summer heat. Fish that's already decomposing is salted and sold as preserved. The resulting smell is legendary. Fish markets are placed downwind of wealthy neighborhoods. Garum deserves special mention. This fermented fish sauce is Rome's favorite condiment, used the way modern cuisine uses salt. It's made by layering fish, often small fish and entrails, with salt in large vessels and letting them ferment in the sun for weeks or months. The liquefied result is strained and sold. Garum production smells so horrific that factories are banned from cities. But Romans love it, using the garum on nearly everything. The finest quality, garum sociorum, is extremely expensive. Lower grades are cheap and available everywhere. The sauce is actually nutritious and probably safe. The salt and fermentation kill most pathogens, but the production process is nauseating. Food adulteration, fraud as business model. Food fraud is rampant and sophisticated. Wine fraud, cut with water to increase volume. Cut with vinegar when it's already turned sour. Colored with dyes to appear richer, sometimes toxic dyes. Sweetened with lead acetate. Preserved with resin, which imparts a distinctive pine flavor. Mixed with cheaper wine varieties. Olive oil fraud, blended with cheaper oils, sesame, linseed, rapeseed. Extended with rendered animal fats. Sold as virgin when it's actually rancid oil refined. Bread fraud, made with cheaper grains, barley instead of wheat, bulked with sawdust or chalk, underbaked to reduce fuel costs, leaving centers doughy, adulterated with ground-up legumes. Spice fraud, extended with colored sawdust, mixed with ground leaves, seeds, or bark. Completely fake, ground pottery sold as pepper. garum fraud, diluted with water and salt, made from already rotted fish, never properly fermented, just salted fish guts. Aediles, city officials, are supposed to enforce standards in markets. They can inspect merchandise, impose fines, and confiscate fraudulent goods. But corruption is endemic. Most vendors pay bribes for protection. Only those who anger powerful people or refuse to pay face consequences. Consumers have little recourse. If you buy tainted food and get sick, that's your problem. If you accuse a vendor of fraud without proof, you risk legal penalties for slander. The caveat emptor, buyer beware principle, dominates. The grain dole, politics as nutrition. To prevent starvation and riots, Rome provides the annona, free or subsidized grain to male Roman citizens. Started in the 2nd century BC, it eventually feeds about 200,000 men, roughly 20% of Rome's population. Recipients collect monthly rations of grain, about 35 kilograms per person. This is enough to sustain a man, though it's monotonous. Women, children, slaves, and non-citizens don't qualify and must rely on recipients sharing. The grain comes primarily from Egypt and North Africa, Rome's bread baskets. Massive grain ships cross the Mediterranean regularly. Any disruption, storms, piracy, war, drought in supplier regions, creates food crises in Rome. The annona is explicitly political. Bread and circuses, panem et circenses, keeps the masses pacified. As long as bellies are full and entertainment is provided, Rome's poor don't riot. Let either fail, and violence erupts. The system works, but creates dependency. Rome's population far exceeds what local agriculture can support. The city survives on imported food. If imports stop, people starve. This vulnerability will eventually contribute to Rome's fall. Malnutrition. Slow starvation. Even with the grain dole, many Romans are chronically malnourished. The diet is monotonous and deficient. Protein deficiency. Meat and fish are expensive. Most Romans eat them rarely, perhaps at festivals or special occasions. Legumes, beans, lentils, provide some protein, but not enough. Children don't grow properly. Adults lack energy. Muscles waste. Vitamin deficiencies. Vitamin C, fresh fruits and vegetables are expensive and seasonal. In winter, scurvy is common. Bleeding gums, weakness, poor wound healing. Vitamin D, rickets. Living in dark insulae with limited sun exposure, many Romans are deficient. Children develop bowed legs and stunted growth. Vitamin A. Deficiency causes night blindness and weakens immune systems. B vitamins. Deficiency causes beriberi, nerve damage and heart problems, and pellagra, dementia, diarrhea, dermatitis. Calcium deficiency. Dairy is consumed, but not in large quantities. Calcium deficiency contributes to weak bones, dental problems, and osteoporosis. The wealthy eat much better. Their diet includes meats, fruits, vegetables, and variety. This nutritional divide is visible in skeletal remains. Aristocrats are taller, have better teeth, and live longer. But even they suffer from lead poisoning and food-borne illnesses. Dining disasters for the rich. Wealthy Romans feast extravagantly, but their banquets harbor dangers. Exotic foods. Rare delicacies carry risks. Dormice, edible rodents fattened on nuts, can transmit diseases. Raw oysters concentrate pathogens. Improperly prepared pufferfish, yes, Romans imported them, contain deadly toxins. Food competitions. Some hosts try to outdo rivals with increasingly exotic and expensive foods. This leads to serving items that are impressive but dangerous, partially spoiled delicacies, toxic plants prepared by inexperienced cooks, animals with parasites. Overeating. Roman feasts encourage gluttony. Multiple courses over many hours, each heavy and rich, guests use emetics to vomit between courses so they can continue eating. The famous vomitorium, actually an exit passage, gets its name from this practice, though the connection is likely coincidental. This overeating causes acute problems: indigestion, nausea, diarrhea. Chronically, it contributes to obesity, though less common than malnutrition, gout, and heart disease. Lead sweeteners. The wealthy sweeten food and wine with sapa and defrutum, grape syrups boiled in lead pots. The resulting lead acetate tastes pleasantly sweet and masks sourness in wine, but it's extremely toxic. The richest Romans received the highest lead doses. Poisoning. Deliberately poisoning rivals is a recognized political tool. Emperors employ food tasters to check for poisons, but clever poisoners find ways around this. Slow-acting poisons. Poisons that don't affect the taster but harm the target due to personal sensitivity. Bribing the taster. Famous alleged poisonings include Claudius, 54 AD, possibly poisoned by his wife Agrippina using toxic mushrooms. Britannicus, 55 AD, Nero's stepbrother, poisoned during dinner. Countless others. Roman history is full of convenient deaths blamed on food. Kitchen hazards. Even preparing food at home, for those who can, is dangerous. Open flames. Cooking over open fires without proper ventilation fills rooms with smoke, causing respiratory problems and eye damage. Burns from splashing hot oil or tipping pots are common. Contaminated cooking vessels. Lead and bronze cookware leach metals into food, especially when cooking acidic dishes. Ceramic glazes sometimes contain lead. Cross-contamination. No understanding of germ theory means raw meat is prepared on the same surfaces as vegetables. Utensils aren't properly cleaned, and hands aren't washed. Food storage. Without refrigeration, food spoils rapidly. Even preserved foods, salted, pickled, dried, can become contaminated. Grain storage attracts rodents that urinate and defecate in the food supply, spreading leptospirosis and other diseases. Every meal in ancient Rome is a calculated risk. The question isn't whether the food is safe, but whether you'll get sick enough to notice. Disease. Living in a plague city. The disease environment. Rome is a perfect incubator for disease. 1 million people packed densely together. Poor sanitation, human waste in streets, contaminated water supplies, malnutrition, weakening immune systems. No concept of germ theory. Primitive medicine. Constant influx of people from across the empire bringing new pathogens, minus rats, mice, and insects everywhere spreading disease. The result? Disease is constant, epidemics are regular, and death is familiar. Common killers. Tuberculosis, consumption. The leading infectious disease killer. TB bacteria spread through coughing in crowded, poorly ventilated spaces, exactly what insulae provide. Symptoms include chronic cough, bloody sputum, weight loss, weakness. Death comes slowly, over months or years. Without antibiotics, TB is fatal in 50% of active cases. Those who survive often relapse. The disease particularly targets lungs but can affect any organ. Skeletal remains from Roman times show TB lesions in bones, confirming widespread infection. Malaria endemic in Rome due to Tiber marshes. Anopheles, mosquitoes breed in standing water and swamps. The disease causes cyclic fevers. Patient is fine for days, then suffers high fever, chills, and sweating for several days, then recovers. Until the next cycle, chronic malaria weakens victims, leaving them vulnerable to other diseases. It causes anemia, enlarged spleen, and in severe cases, cerebral malaria leading to seizures and death. Children and pregnant women are most vulnerable. Romans attempt to avoid bad air from swamps, but don't understand mosquitoes are the vector. Draining marshes does help reduce malaria, though they don't know why. But the Tiber's marshes are too extensive to fully drain. Gastrointestinal diseases. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and countless other diarrheal diseases kill constantly. Diarrhea leading to dehydration is a leading cause of death, especially in children. In a world without oral rehydration therapy or intravenous fluids, severe diarrhea is often fatal. Respiratory infections. Pneumonia, bronchitis, influenza all kill regularly in Rome's crowded conditions. Poor nutrition, smoke-filled air, and lack of proper medical care turn common colds into killers. Parasites. Internal parasites are nearly universal. Archaeological examination of Roman latrines finds eggs of roundworms, Ascaris lumbricoides, can grow 30 centimeters long, cause intestinal blockages. Whipworms, tricura, cause anemia and malnutrition. Tapeworms can grow meters long, absorbing nutrients and causing B12 deficiency. Minus liver flukes cause liver damage and bile duct cancer. Blood flukes, schistosoma, cause bladder and intestinal disease. External parasites are equally common. Lice, head, body, and pubic lice spread typhus and other diseases. Fleas spread plague and typhus. Bedbugs cause itching, allergic reactions, and sleep deprivation. Mites cause scabies, intensely itchy skin infection. Deworming medicines exist, mostly herbal remedies of variable effectiveness, but reinfection is constant in unsanitary conditions. The Great Plagues, several devastating epidemics sweep through Rome. Antonine Plague, 165 to 180 A.D. Brought back by soldiers returning from campaigns in Parthia, this pandemic kills an estimated 5 to 10 million people across the Roman Empire. Modern scholars think it was probably smallpox or measles, both devastating to populations with no prior exposure. The historian Dio Cassius reports 2,000 deaths per day in Rome at the plague's peak. Bodies pile up faster than they can be buried. The disease attacks all social classes. Emperor Marcus Aurelius himself may have died from it in 180 A.D. Symptoms described in historical sources match smallpox, high fever, rash covering the body, severe weakness. Mortality rate reaches 25 to 30%. Survivors are often left blind, disfigured by scarring or weakened. The plague devastates Rome's economy. So many die that labor shortages occur. Agriculture suffers, trade declines, and military recruitment becomes difficult. The empire never fully recovers its previous strength. Plague of Cyprian, 249 to 262 A.D. Named after Saint Cyprian, Bishop of Carthage, who described it. This plague is even more deadly than the Antonine Plague. Modern theories suggest it might have been smallpox, again, viral hemorrhagic fever like Ebola or pandemic influenza. Cyprian describes horrific symptoms, continuous vomiting and diarrhea, eyes reddened by bleeding, feet or other body parts amputated by infection and gangrene. The disease kills quickly. Many die within days of first symptoms. The plague contributes to the crisis of the 3rd century, a period when the Roman Empire nearly collapses from combination of plague, civil war, economic crisis, and barbarian invasions. Cities depopulate, farmland lies abandoned, and the empire fragments. Justinianic Plague, 541 to 542 A.D. Technically after the Western Roman Empire's fall, but it strikes Constantinople and remaining Roman territories. This is definitively bubonic plague, Yersinia pestis, the same pathogen that causes the later Black Death. The plague enters through the Mediterranean port of Pelusium in Egypt and spreads rapidly via trade routes. Procopius, a contemporary historian, describes apocalyptic scenes in Constantinople, bodies piling up in the streets and thrown into the sea, commerce stopping, starvation following as no one dares to work. Estimated death toll reaches 25 to 50 million across the Mediterranean world. The Byzantine Empire, last remnant of Rome, is permanently weakened and never regains its former territory or power. Medical understanding, wrong but trying. Roman medicine combines Greek medical theory, practical experience, superstition, and guesswork. The 4 humors. Theory. Disease results from imbalance among 4 bodily fluids: blood, hot and wet, associated with spring; yellow bile, hot and dry, associated with summer; black bile, cold and dry, associated with autumn; phlegm, cold and wet, associated with winter. Treatment aims to restore balance, often through bloodletting to remove excess blood. This weakens already sick patients, worsening outcomes. Miasma theory: that disease comes from bad air, miasma, from rotting matter, swamps, corpses. This is partly right. Bad smells often indicate unsanitary conditions breeding disease, but the mechanism is wrong. Romans burn aromatic substances, believing good smells fight bad air. During plagues, people wear sachets of herbs around their necks. These don't help, but at least don't actively harm. Supernatural causes. Disease is also attributed to divine punishment for impiety, curses from enemies, evil spirits, astrological influences, violating taboos. This leads to treatments like prayers, sacrifices, amulets, and exorcisms alongside practical medicine. Roman doctors. Hit or miss, Roman physicians vary widely in skill and ethics. Greek physicians. Most elite doctors are Greek, especially from the medical schools of Alexandria and Pergamon. They have genuine medical knowledge. Anatomy, from animal dissection, pharmacology, medicinal plants, surgical techniques. Famous physicians like Galen make real contributions to medical science. Army surgeons. Military doctors gain extensive experience treating combat wounds. They develop specialized instruments for removing arrows, amputation tools, and techniques for battlefield surgery. Survival rates for wounded soldiers are surprisingly high if they reach medical care. Midwives. Women practice as midwives, assisting childbirth. The best are skilled and experienced, using techniques passed down through generations. But maternal and infant mortality remains horrifically high due to limited understanding of infection, complications, and emergencies. Quacks and charlatans. Many doctors are frauds selling useless or harmful treatments, magic potions promising cures for everything, amulets to ward off disease, worthless herbs sold at exorbitant prices, procedures that do nothing or cause harm. No licensing system exists. Anyone can claim to be a doctor. Desperate patients often can't distinguish real physicians from frauds. Treatments, sometimes helpful, often harmful. Bloodletting. The universal treatment for almost everything. Physicians cut veins or apply leeches to remove excess blood. Theory says this rebalances humors. Reality says it weakens patients and reduces their ability to fight disease. Despite harming more than helping, bloodletting persists because it sometimes provides temporary relief, reducing blood pressure slightly. Recovery or death after bloodletting is attributed to other factors. The practice is deeply embedded in medical theory. Herbal remedies. Some genuinely work. Willow bark contains salicylic acid, precursor to aspirin, for pain and fever. Opium poppy for pain, highly effective but addictive. Various plants with antimicrobial properties. Herbs that actually reduce inflammation or aid digestion. Others are useless but harmless. Some are actively poisonous. Surgery. Roman surgery is surprisingly sophisticated. Cataract removal, couching, pushing lens out of line of sight, trephination, drilling holes in skull to relieve pressure, amputations, removal of bladder stones, hemorrhoid removal, setting fractures. Surgical instruments found in Pompeii and other sites are sophisticated. Scalpels, forceps, bone saws, specula, catheters. Some designs are still used today, but surgery is performed without. Effective anesthesia, wine, opium, and herbs provide limited relief. Antiseptics, no understanding of infection. Antibiotics. So post-surgical infection is common and often fatal. Survival rates vary. Simple procedures, removing surface growths, setting bones, usually work. Major surgery, abdominal operations, amputations, often kills through shock, blood loss, or infection. Cauterization. Burning wounds with hot irons to stop bleeding and cleanse them. This is agonizing and causes additional tissue damage, but it does stop bleeding and may kill some bacteria through heat. Childbirth, the most dangerous journey. For women, pregnancy and childbirth are leading causes of death. Maternal mortality is estimated at 1 to 2%, meaning 1 in 50 to 1 in 100 pregnancies kills the mother. With women having multiple pregnancies, lifetime risk is substantial. Complications include hemorrhage, heavy bleeding during or after delivery, eclampsia, seizures from pregnancy-induced hypertension, obstructed labor, baby can't pass through birth canal, infection, puerperal fever from bacterial infection, placental problems, retained placenta, placenta previa. Midwives have limited ability to handle complications. If labor is obstructed and the baby won't come, both mother and baby usually die. Cesarean sections are performed only when the mother is already dead or dying. No woman survives the operation in ancient times. Infant mortality is even worse. 25 to 30% of babies die in their first year. Common causes: birth trauma and complications, congenital defects, infections, tetanus from contaminated umbilical cord cutting, diarrheal diseases, respiratory infections, malnutrition, inadequate breast milk, unsafe supplemental feeding. By age 10, approximately half of all children born have died. This horrific mortality rate shapes Roman society profoundly. Parents are emotionally guarded about newborns because so many don't survive. Violence, death around every corner street crime, the daily threat. Roman streets are dangerous, especially after dark. No organized police force exists. The vigils focus on firefighting. The Praetorian Guard protects the emperor. The urban cohorts handle major riots. But ordinary crime? That's your problem. Mugging and robbery. Thieves operate everywhere, but especially dark alleys and side streets, building entrances and doorways, bridges, choke points easy to ambush, markets crowded, distracting. Tactics include simple grab and run, snatching purses or goods, armed robbery, knife or club threats, coordinated gangs, multiple attackers, distraction, accomplice bumps into you while another steals. Carrying money is risky. Large transactions use letters of credit or require armed escorts. Poor people carrying obvious wealth become instant targets. Murder. Life is cheap in Rome. People kill for money, robbery gone wrong, revenge, settling disputes or insults, passion, jealousy, rage. Politics, eliminating rivals. Entertainment, drunken brawls turning fatal. The murder rate is impossible to calculate precisely, but archaeological evidence and historical accounts suggest it's high. Bodies turn up in streets, alleys, and the Tiber regularly. Legal consequences depend heavily on status. Kill a nobleman and face execution. Kill a slave or poor person and face minimal punishment. Maybe a fine if the victim's family pursues it. Sexual assault. Common and rarely punished. Women and children are particularly vulnerable. Roman law technically prohibits rape, but in practice, raping a slave is legal, their property. Raping a free woman requires witnesses and proof. Victim's reputation matters more than perpetrator's guilt. Penalties are light even when convicted. Women avoid going out alone, especially at night. Those without male escorts or protection are seen as fair game by predators. Domestic violence. Behind closed doors, Roman law gives the paterfamilias absolute authority over his household. This includes the right to physically punish family members. Wife beating. Legal and socially accepted as long as it doesn't cause permanent injury or death. A husband has the right to discipline his wife. Divorce for abuse is possible, but socially damaging for the woman. Child beating. Corporal punishment is standard parenting. Teachers routinely beat students. Masters beat slaves. Violence against children is so normalized, it's rarely even mentioned in sources unless it results in death. Infanticide. Legal to expose unwanted infants, leaving them outdoors to die from exposure, starvation, or animal predation. Parents do this for various reasons. Poverty. Can't afford to raise the child. Deformity. Disabled children are seen as cursed. Gender. Preferring sons over daughters. Illegitimacy. Children born outside marriage. Exposed infants sometimes die. Sometimes they are taken by slave traders and raised as slaves. Occasionally, they're rescued by childless couples. But exposure is essentially a death sentence. Slavery violence. Masters have complete power over slaves, including physical punishment up to and including death. Whipping is routine discipline. Severe punishment includes branding, shackling, crucifixion, being sent to gladiator schools or mines, essentially death sentences. After a slave murders their master, Roman law requires executing all the household slaves, even if innocent. This happened in 61 AD when a slave killed city prefect Pedanius Secundus. All 400 of his household slaves were executed despite protests. Gladiatorial games, murder as entertainment. The amphitheater is Rome's premier entertainment venue. The Colosseum holds 50,000 to 80,000 spectators watching people and animals fight to death. Morning animal hunts, venation. Exotic animals from across the empire are killed. Lions, tigers, bears, bulls, elephants, rhinos, hippos, leopards, wolves, crocodiles, ostriches, boars, deer. Animals fight each other or are hunted by trained beast fighters, venatores. Thousands die in single day of games. Emperor Trajan's games in 107 AD reportedly killed 11,000 animals. Some displays are elaborately staged with artificial scenery representing forests or landscapes. Animals are released in waves to keep the spectacle continuous. Midday, executions, damnatio ad bestias. Criminals, war captives, and Christians are executed publicly, thrown to starved lions or bears, forced to fight armed guards while unarmed, burned alive, crucified in the arena. These aren't just executions, they're theatrical productions. Condemned prisoners might be forced to act out mythological deaths, dressed as Orpheus and torn apart by animals, or as Icarus and dropped from heights. Crowds cheer as people are ripped apart. Children watch. It's a festival atmosphere. Food vendors sell snacks. The audience eats lunch while watching executions. Afternoon, gladiator combat. The main event. Professional fighters, gladiators, battle for crowd entertainment. Gladiators include slaves purchased for training, condemned criminals, prisoners of war, volunteers, free men seeking glory or money. They train at gladiator schools, ludi, under harsh conditions. Training is brutal, discipline absolute. Many die in training before ever reaching the arena. Different gladiator types fight with different equipment. Murmillo, helmet, large shield, short sword. Retiarius, net, trident, dagger, minimal armor. Thraex, curved sword, small shield. Secutor, built to counter Retiarius. Hoplomachus, spear, small shield. Matches are carefully managed to be exciting. Quick kills disappoint crowds. Gladiators are trained to fight skillfully, wounding rather than immediately killing to prolong drama. When one fighter is defeated, they can appeal for mercy, missio. The crowd signals with thumb gestures. The exact gesture is debated, not the modern thumbs up down. The editor, game sponsor, often the emperor, makes the final decision. If mercy is denied, the victor kills the defeated gladiator with a thrust to the throat or heart. The body is dragged from the arena. The next pair enters. Not all fights end in death. Actually, most don't. Gladiators are expensive investments. Killing them every match is wasteful. Many matches end with one fighter yielding and receiving mercy, but the threat of death is real and executions common enough to satisfy bloodlust. Public executions, lessons in terror. Beyond the arena, executions occur throughout the city. Crucifixion. The most shameful and painful death reserved for slaves, pirates, and rebels. The condemned carries a wooden crossbeam through streets to the execution site while being whipped and mocked. They're then nailed or tied to a cross and left to die slowly from asphyxiation, exposure, and exhaustion. Death can take days. Crucifixion sites line major roads entering Rome. The Appian Way famously displayed 6,000 crucified slaves after Spartacus's revolt, a 200-kilometer line of dying men, a warning to any who might rebel. Beheading. For Roman citizens, a merciful death. The condemned kneels, and an executioner severs the head with a sword. Quick, if the executioner is skilled. Strangling, common for various crimes. The condemned is strangled with a rope or cord, usually in the Tullianum, Rome's ancient prison near the Forum. Political prisoners often die this way. Burning. For particularly heinous crimes like arson or treason, the condemned is tied to a stake and burned alive. Emperor Nero famously burned Christians as human torches to light his gardens. Throwing from Tarpeian Rock. Traitors are thrown from this cliff on Capitoline Hill, not used frequently in imperial times, but historically significant. Public executions serve multiple purposes. Deterrence, warning others not to commit crimes. Entertainment, crowds gather to watch. Social reinforcement, affirming who has power and who doesn't. Religious cleansing, removing pollution from the community. Executions are festive occasions. Vendors sell food and drink. Crowds cheer. It's normalized violence, and Romans see nothing wrong with it. Warfare, empire built on blood. Rome's empire is built and maintained through constant warfare. Military service means training brutality. Roman military training is designed to break men down and rebuild them as soldiers. Discipline is maintained through flogging for minor infractions, execution for major offenses, decimation, killing every 10th man for cowardice or mutiny, harsh physical conditioning. Campaign hardships. Long marches carrying 30 kilograms of equipment, poor rations, grain, salt pork, sour wine, sleeping in tents or open air in all weather, disease killing more soldiers than combat. Years away from home, battle horror. Ancient warfare is close quarters butchery, stabbing with short swords, gladius through gaps in enemy formations, shield bashes, crushing fasces, trampling by cavalry, arrow volleys, the smell of blood, shit, and fear, screams of wounded and dying, slipping on blood-soaked ground. Winners get to loot, rape, and enslave. Losers get enslaved or killed. There's no mercy, no Geneva Convention, no humanitarian limits. Injuries and death. Combat wounds are horrific. Severed limbs, deep sword and spear wounds, shattered bones from club blows, arrow punctures, burns from fire weapons. Without modern medicine, many die from blood loss before reaching medical care. Infections kill most wounded survivors within days. Amputations, crude sawing, often prove fatal from shock or infection. Survivors often disabled permanently. Psychological trauma. What we call PTSD is universal among combat veterans, but not understood. Soldiers return home having seen and done terrible things. Many can't adjust to civilian life. They suffer nightmares, violent outbursts, anxiety, depression, substance abuse, alcohol, inability to maintain relationships. Roman society offers no mental health support. Veterans are expected to simply endure and move on. Darkar, civil wars, Romans killing. Rome's political instability leads to frequent civil wars where Roman legions fight each other. Civil war between Caesar and Pompey, 49 to 45 BC, tens of thousands dead. Wars following Caesar's assassination, 44 to 30 BC, hundreds of thousands dead. Year of 4 emperors, 69 AD. Multiple claimants fighting for throne. Crisis of 3rd century, 235 to 284 AD. Near continuous civil conflict. These wars are particularly destructive because both sides use Roman military tactics and equipment, evenly matched. Fighting occurs in Roman territory, devastating cities and farmland. Winners often purge supporters of losers, eliminating entire families. Economic disruption from warfare compounds other problems citizens caught in civil wars face. Armies looting cities for supplies, being conscripted to fight for whichever side controls their area, execution if they're on the losing side, famine as farming is disrupted. The baths, communal everything. Cross, the bath experience, hygiene theater. Roman public baths, thermae, are central to city life. They're not just for washing. They're social clubs, gyms, libraries, and meeting places. The largest, like the baths of Caracalla and Diocletian, are massive complexes serving thousands daily. Entry costs are low or free, provided by emperors or wealthy benefactors seeking popularity. This means everyone uses them, rich and poor, free and slave, healthy and sick, all sharing the same waters. The bath routine. 1. Apoditerium, changing room. Remove clothes, leave them with slave attendant, theft is common. 2. Palestra, exercise. Yard, wrestling, ball games, weight lifting to work up a sweat 3. Sudatorium, sweat room, like a sauna, heated by underfloor furnaces 4. Caldarium, hot bath. Hot water pool, temperature around 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit 5. Tepidarium, warm bath, moderate temperature for adjustment 6. Frigidarium, cold bath. Cold plunge pool to close pores. Throughout the process, slaves rub oil onto skin, scrape off oil, sweat, and dirt with strigils, curved metal scrapers. Provide towels, shared by many people. The problems. Water contamination. Same water serves hundreds or thousands of people, changed infrequently. Heating massive amounts of water is expensive. No filtration. People with open sores, infections, and diseases all bathing together. No soap. Romans use oil and scraping instead. Disease transmission. Every contagious skin disease spreads rapidly. Ringworm, fungal infection. Impetigo, bacterial skin infection. Scabies, mite infestation. Lice, various fungal infections. Respiratory diseases spread in hot, humid, crowded environments. Tuberculosis, influenza, various other airborne infections. Intestinal parasites spread through fecal contamination of shared water. Shared equipment. Strigils used on multiple people transfer skin infections. Towels shared by many spread pathogens. Oil containers used by everyone are contaminated. Heat dangers. Caldarium and sudatorium temperatures can cause heat stroke. Elderly, ill, or drunk bathers sometimes die from heat. Rapid temperature changes, hot to cold plunge, can trigger heart attacks. Structural hazards. Hypocaust, underfloor heating. Systems occasionally malfunction, releasing toxic fumes. Stone floors can crack from heat stress. Vaulted ceilings sometimes collapse. Slippery floors cause falls and injuries. Bath culture, social necessity. Despite health risks, Romans love their baths. Why? Hygiene. With no home bathing facilities for most people, public baths are the only way to stay relatively clean. Body odor, lice, and skin conditions are universal without regular washing. Social networking. Baths are where business deals are made, political alliances formed, gossip exchanged. Not attending baths means social isolation. Class mixing. One of the few places where different social classes interact, though wealthy often pay for private rooms or attend at different hours. Exercise and health. Romans believe bathing is medicinal, restoring humoral balance and promoting health. Doctors recommend it, unaware they're prescribing disease transmission. Luxury experience. For poor Romans living in tiny, dirty insulae, Baths offer a taste of luxury. Heated rooms, warm water, massage, leisure time. The emperor becomes popular by building new baths or subsidizing entry. It's political investment with high returns. Darakoa. Public latrines, communal defecation. Public latrines serve Rome's sanitation needs, or fail to more accurately. They're communal rooms with stone or wooden benches with holes cut in them, no partitions or privacy, continuous water channel beneath carrying waste, to sewers, sponges on sticks, tersorium, in a water channel for wiping, shared by all users. The experience. You enter a latrine and sit alongside multiple other people, all defecating simultaneously while chatting about daily affairs. Privacy doesn't exist, nor does personal hygiene as we understand it. You use the communal sponge, rinse it in the channel, and leave it for the next person. Disease transmission. Public latrines are perfect disease vectors. Fecal-oral transmission of cholera, typhoid, dysentery, hepatitis. Intestinal parasite eggs on shared sponges. Flies carrying pathogens from feces to faces and food. Rats and other vermin attracted to waste. Smell. Despite water channels, the stench is overwhelming. Romans burn incense and aromatic oils trying to mask it. Danger. Sewer gases, methane, hydrogen sulfide, accumulate and can cause explosions. Several accounts describe people being killed by exploding latrines. Rats emerging from sewers sometimes bite users. Snakes occasionally come through pipes. Some Romans superstitiously fear demons or evil spirits emerging from toilet holes to attack their genitals. This fear is mocked by sophisticated urbanites, but persists among the populace. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's Great Sewer. Rome's main sewer is an engineering marvel dating back centuries. It collects waste from public latrines, baths, streets, and, for the wealthy private homes, channeling everything to the Tiber River. The system works. Sort of. It prevents complete burial in waste. But capacity issues. Rome's population exceeds what the sewer system was designed for. During heavy rains, the system overflows, flooding streets with sewage. Maintenance. Sewers require cleaning to prevent blockages. Slaves perform this dangerous, disgusting work, crawling through waste-filled tunnels. Many die from toxic gases, disease, or drowning in sewage. Pollution. All waste goes untreated into the Tiber, creating a toxic river. Downstream communities suffer from polluted water. The river occasionally catches fire from oils and flammable waste. Limited coverage. Only main streets and wealthy areas connect to sewers. Most buildings lack connections. Residents rely on chamber pots thrown into streets, cesspits beneath buildings, which leak into groundwater. Simply defecating in alleys, walking Rome streets means constantly dodging human waste. Work, labor, without rest. The working poor, from dawn until dark. Most Romans work 6 days per week. Religious festivals provide rest. Work begins at sunrise, ends at sunset. There are no labor laws, no minimum wage, no workplace safety regulations. Common occupations. Construction workers. Building Rome's monuments requires enormous labor. Carrying heavy stones and materials, working at dangerous heights without safety equipment, mixing and pouring concrete. Roman concrete is advanced but toxic. Exposed to weather extremes. Accidents are common. Falls, crushing injuries, heat stroke. No compensation for injured workers. If you can't work, you don't eat. Dock workers. Loading and unloading ships at Rome's ports, Ostia and Portus. Heavy physical labor in all weather. Dangerous cargo, sharp objects, unstable loads, no safety equipment, subject to exploitation by shipping companies, market vendors. Standing in markets all day, selling goods, no protection from weather, constant interaction with thieves, competition driving prices down, spoiled goods representing total loss. Craftsmen, skilled workers in various trades, blacksmiths burned by hot metal, lung damage from fumes, potters, repetitive strain, injuries, lead poisoning from glazes, fullers, textile cleaners using urine and harsh chemicals, suffering skin problems, tanners, working with toxic chemicals, horrible smells, skin damage, shop workers, employees in tabernae, shops, restaurants, long hours serving customers, low pay, sexual harassment, especially for women, theft from inventory blamed on workers. Slavery, property that breathes. Approximately 1/3 of Rome's population consists of slaves, perhaps 300,000 to 400,000 people in the city itself. They're property, not people, under Roman law. How people become enslaved. War captives. Rome's military campaigns enslaved defeated populations. After major victories, tens of thousands are marched to Rome in chains for sale. Birth. Children born to slave mothers are automatically slaves, regardless of father's status. This ensures generational slavery. Debt. Those unable to pay debts can be enslaved, though this becomes less common in imperial times. Abandonment. Exposed infants collected by slave traders. Piracy and kidnapping. Despite laws against enslaving Roman citizens, pirates and kidnappers capture people for sale, sometimes falsifying their origins. Criminal punishment. Some convicted criminals are sentenced to slavery. Slave work varies dramatically. Domestic slaves, familia urbana. Working in wealthy households, personal servants to masters, cooks, cleaners, childcare, skilled positions, tutors, accountants, secretaries. Treatment varies. Some are treated almost like family, though still property, educated, and eventually freed. Others suffer abuse, beatings, and sexual exploitation. Agricultural slaves. Working on farms and estates, brutal physical labor, poor food and shelter, work to exhaustion, high mortality. Large agricultural estates, latifundia, work slaves in chain gangs, literally shackled together. They sleep in barracks under guard. Industrial slaves. Working in dangerous occupations. Mining. Absolutely the worst fate. Mines are death sentences. Slaves are worked until they die from exhaustion, accidents, or toxic exposures. Few survive more than a few years. Quarries. Similar to mines, brutal labor, high mortality. Workshops. Manufacturing goods under harsh conditions. Public slaves, servi publicae, owned by the state, maintaining infrastructure, serving in government offices, working in mint producing coins, firefighting, vigils are freedmen. Generally better treated than privately owned slaves, since no single master can abuse them arbitrarily. Gladiatorial slaves, trained to fight in arenas. Despite the danger, some prefer this to other slave work because better food and medical care, valuable investments, possibility of fame, chance to earn freedom through victories. Death in arena is quicker than slow death in mines. Sexual slavery. Women and children suffer particularly. Prostitution, forced or coerced, sexual availability to masters. Rape is not legally possible since slaves are property. Breeding programs. Slaves forced to reproduce to produce more slaves. Manumission, freeing. Slaves can be freed through master's will upon their death, reward for loyal service, payment. Slaves can earn money and purchase freedom. Legal requirements. Some situations automatically grant freedom. Freedmen, liberty, become Roman citizens, but still owe obligations to former masters. Many work their entire lives to earn freedom only to die shortly after. Child labor. Stolen childhood as a protected period, doesn't exist for most Romans. Children begin working as soon as they're physically able, usually around age 6 to 7. Work types: apprenticeships, learning trades from craftsmen, long hours with minimal pay, physical abuse common, beating seen as proper training, dangerous work, sharp tools, hot materials, toxic substances, agricultural work. Farm children work fields alongside adults, planting, harvesting, animal care, physical labor beyond their capacity, exposure to weather and danger. Street work. Urban poor children begging, sometimes deliberately maimed to elicit sympathy, selling small items, flowers, food, running errands, prostitution, child sexual exploitation is rampant, theft and picking pockets. Domestic service. Children as household servants, cleaning, cooking, errands, subject to abuse from masters and older servants, particularly vulnerable to sexual exploitation. Entertainment. Child actors and performers. Potential gladiator training. Starts young. Circus performers. No safety, no security. Work injuries are common, compensation non-existent. Falls. Construction workers, window cleaners, repairmen fall regularly. Without safety equipment, falls from even modest heights cause serious injury or death. Crushing injuries. Heavy objects drop on workers. Carts overturn. Structural collapses bury workers. Burns. Blacksmiths, glassmakers, cooks, and others working with fire suffer regular burns. Severe burns become infected and kill. Toxic exposures. Lead poisoning, plumbers, painters, mercury poisoning, miners, craftsmen, lung damage, stone carvers, miners from dust, chemical burns, fullers, tanners. Infections. Minor cuts and scrapes become infected. Without antibiotics, infections can turn deadly. Injured workers who can't perform their jobs face no income, homelessness, starvation, forced begging, death. There's no social safety net, no disability compensation, no insurance. You work or you die. Law and justice. Order through brutality. Legal system. Theory versus practice. Roman law is sophisticated and influential. Modern Western legal systems trace their roots to Rome. Roman legal concepts include presumption of innocence, right to defense, written laws publicly displayed, 12 tables, 450 BC, contracts and property rights, legal precedent and jurisprudence, separation between civil and criminal law. But theory and practice diverge wildly. Justice depends entirely on your social status and wealth. The class divide. Two justice systems. Roman law explicitly recognizes two classes with different rights and punishments. Honestiores, upper classes. Senators, equestrians, knights. Decurions, local officials. Veterans, sometimes wealthy citizens. Rights and privileges. Cannot be tortured, usually, cannot be sentenced to humiliating punishments, right to appeal to emperor, exile instead of execution for many crimes, access to better courts and judges. Humiliores, lower classes. Common citizens, freedmen, poor people, non-citizens. Vulnerabilities can be tortured during investigation, subject to brutal punishments, crucifixion, burning, animal attacks, limited appeal rights, less access to legal representation, verdicts often predetermined by class. Example: a wealthy man who murders might face exile and property confiscation. A poor man who steals bread might be crucified. The law explicitly prescribes different punishments for the same crimes based on class. Courts. Theater over truth. Roman trials are public spectacles held in forums. Crowds gather to watch. Lawyers, advocates, perform rhetorical displays designed to sway judges or juries through emotion rather than evidence. No professional judges. Cases are heard by praetors, magistrates with legal authority, juries of citizens for some criminal cases, Senate for cases involving senators, emperor, appeals, and important cases. Many have no legal training. Decisions are based on persuasiveness of lawyers, social status of parties, political considerations, personal biases, sometimes evidence. Lawyers as performers. Legal advocacy is rhetoric, not rigorous analysis. Emotional appeals outweigh facts, character assassination of opponents, references to tradition and ancestors, political connections mentioned prominently. Evidence is just one tool among many. Cicero, Rome's greatest orator, wins cases through rhetorical brilliance regardless of client guilt. His speeches are masterpieces of manipulation, using every trick to sway audiences. Witness testimony. Witnesses can be called, but credibility depends on social class. Slaves' testimony requires torture. Romans believe pain ensures truth. It doesn't. Wealthy can intimidate witnesses. Perjury is common. Evidence. Physical evidence matters less than in modern courts. Documents can be forged. Provenance is questionable, and authentication is difficult. Torture. The wrong tool. Romans believe torture produces truth. The assumption, pain, makes people unable to lie. Reality. Torture makes people say whatever they think will stop the pain. Who can be tortured? Always? Slaves, for any investigation, non-citizens, humiliores, accused of serious crimes. Sometimes, Roman citizens of lower classes, anyone accused of treason. Never, theoretically. Honestiores, Roman citizens of higher classes. Torture. Methods. Burns applied to sensitive areas. Crushing. Fingers, limbs crushed in devices. Water torture. Near drowning. Suspension. Hung by wrists or thumbs, sometimes with weights on feet. Victims say anything to stop torture, confessing to crimes they didn't commit, implicating innocent people, providing false information. But Romans believe torture works, so it continues. Punishments. Cruel and public Roman punishment philosophy, deterrence through terror. Punishments are public spectacles designed to horrify and warn. For citizens, honestiores. Exile, exilium. Banishment from Rome and Italy, loss of citizenship, property confiscation, permanent separation from family, vulnerability in foreign lands. Many choose suicide over exile. Fines. For minor offenses, wealthy can simply pay, poor cannot, leading to debt slavery. Loss of status. Senators can be stripped of rank, infamia, losing political rights and social standing. Execution, decapitation. For the most serious crimes, merciful death, quick beheading. But social stigma is enormous. For non-citizens and lower classes, crucifixion, crux. For slaves, rebels, violent criminals, public humiliation through streets, nailing or tying to cross, slow death from asphyxiation and exposure, body left to rot as warning, death takes hours to days. Victims suffer unimaginable agony. Burning alive, crematio. For arson and particularly heinous crimes, tied to stake, fire lit beneath or around, death from smoke inhalation or burns, absolutely agonizing. Damnatio ad bestias. Thrown to wild animals in arena, lions, bears, wild dogs, sometimes elaborate staging, victim dressed as mythological figure, crowd entertainment, terror for audience and victim, damnatio ad metalla. Sentenced to mines. Life sentence effectively, brutal labor until death, no hope of release, slow death from exhaustion, accidents, disease. Decimation, military punishment for cowardice or mutiny. Every 10th man selected by lot, clubbed to death by his fellow soldiers, survivors forced to camp outside fortifications, psychological trauma for all used, rarely because it weakens units, but the threat terrifies troops. Prisons, holding pens, not punishment. Rome has few prisons. The Tullianum, Mamertine prison near the Forum, holds those awaiting trial, those awaiting execution. Important prisoners for display conditions are horrific. Underground cells, no light or ventilation, no sanitation, minimal food and water, rats and vermin. Disease spreads rapidly. Prison isn't punishment, it's temporary holding. Punishment is execution, exile, or other penalties. Arbitrary justice. The emperor has absolute power over justice. He can overturn any verdict, pardon or condemn anyone, create new laws instantly, ignore existing laws, punish without trial. Good emperors exercise this power judiciously. Bad emperors use it capriciously and cruelly. Either way, no one is safe from imperial whim. Treason, maiestas, is particularly dangerous. It's defined broadly as insulting the emperor, criticizing government, prophecy, predicting emperor's death, magic, cursing emperor, refusing to sacrifice to emperor's genius, accusers receive rewards, portion of condemned's property, encouraging false accusations. Paranoid emperors see treason everywhere. Innocent people die regularly. No appeals for most once sentenced. Most have no recourse. Roman citizens can appeal to the emperor, provocatio ad caesarem, but it's expensive. Bribes to access emperor, rarely successful. Emperor might impose harsher sentence. Takes time, during which prisoner sits in terrible conditions. For non-citizens, there's no appeal. Sentence is carried out immediately. Vigilante justice. With no police force, victims of crime often take matters into their own hands, tracking down thieves, beating or killing suspects, hiring thugs for revenge, public shaming. This creates cycles of violence. Feuds develop. Street justice is arbitrary and brutal. Wealthier Romans hire private guards or gangs. Political figures maintain armed supporters. Rome has no monopoly on violence. Anyone with resources can deploy force. The spectacles, entertainment or execution. The Colosseum, monument to death. The Flavian Amphitheater, Colosseum, is Rome's most iconic structure. Completed in 80 A.D., it's an engineering marvel, holds 50,000 to 80,000 spectators. Complex underground systems for animals and fighters, retractable awning for shade, sophisticated crowd management. But it's fundamentally a killing facility. Over its centuries of operation, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, of humans and animals die for entertainment. The games, all-day death. A typical day of games, Munera, includes morning, 6 a.m., noon, venaciones, animal hunts. Exotic animals from across the empire are displayed and killed. African animals, lions, leopards, elephants, rhinos, hippos, crocodiles, ostriches. Asian animals, tigers, bears. European animals, bulls, wolves, wild boar, deer. These aren't fair hunts, they are slaughters. Starved animals released from underground cages, professional beast fighters, venatores with weapons, sometimes animals forced to fight each other, elaborate sets creating forest or desert scenes. Emperor Trajan's games, 107 AD, kill 11,000 animals over 123 days. Titus's games for Colosseum opening, 80 AD, kill 9,000 animals in 100 days. Ecological impact is severe. North African elephants, lions, and other species are hunted to extinction or near extinction, supplying Roman games. The killing serves multiple purposes: display of empire's reach, exotic animals prove conquest, demonstration of human dominance over nature, crowd entertainment, status for sponsor, bigger equals better. Midday, noon to 2 p.m. Executions. The hottest, least popular time becomes execution slot. Crowds thin as many leave for lunch, but thousands remain to watch. Gladiator types and matchups. Murmillo. Large rectangular shield, scutum. Helmet with fish crest. Short sword, gladius. Armored right arm and left leg, slow but well protected. Thraex, Thracian. Small square shield, parmula. Curved sword, sica. Wide-brimmed helmet, both legs armored, quick and aggressive. Retiarius, net fighter. Net, rete, trident, fusina, dagger, pugio, minimal armor, shoulder guard, only, fastest, most vulnerable. Secutor, chaser. Designed to fight retiarius, smooth helmet to avoid net catching, large shield, sword, heavily armored. Hoplomachus, spear, hasta. Small round shield, sword as backup, helmet and leg armor. Provocator, sword and large shield, breastplate, only fights other provocatores. Each matchup creates different dynamics. Murmillo versus Thraex. Strength versus speed, retiarius versus secutor. Reach versus armor, Hoplomachus versus Murmillo. Spear range versus close combat. The fight. Gladiators enter through opposite gates. They salute the sponsor, editor, possibly saying, Moriture te salutamus. We who are about to die salute you, though this phrase may be historical fiction. Fighting begins. These aren't mindless brawls. Gladiators train extensively in specific techniques. Matches combine. Skill demonstration. Crowds appreciate technique. Dramatic tension. Suspense over outcome. Violence. Blood and injury excite. Crowds. Fighters aim to wound rather than immediately kill, prolonging the spectacle. A skilled gladiator might cut his opponent multiple times, weakening him gradually. When one gladiator is clearly beaten, he can ask for mercy, missio, drop weapon, raise finger, continue fighting, risk death but possibly turn the tide if mercy is requested. Crowd signals, opinion with thumb gestures, precise gesture debated. Editor makes final decision based on fight quality. Good performance earns mercy. Gladiator's record and popularity, political considerations, personal whim. If mercy granted, defeated gladiator lives to fight another day. He's escorted from arena. If mercy denied, victor delivers killing blow, throat cut or heart stab, should be quick and professional. Defeated gladiator expected to die bravely. Body is dragged through gate of death, porta libitinensis. Attendants dressed as Charon, ferryman of the dead, or Hermes Psychopompos, guide of souls, ensure he's actually dead. Sand is raked to cover blood. Next pair enters. Not all die. Despite mythology, most gladiator fights don't end in death. Gladiators are expensive, trained for years. Killing them, every fight is economically unsustainable. Many matches end in missio for both fighters, draw. Death rate is perhaps 10 to 20% of matches. But the threat is real. Every gladiator knows death might come today. Gladiator schools, prison training camps. Gladiators train at ludi, gladiator schools. The largest, Ludus Magnus, is right next to the Colosseum, connected by underground tunnel. Life at the Ludus. Housing. Small cells around central courtyard. Slaves are shackled at night. Conditions are prison-like. Training. Brutal and constant. Hours of weapons drilled daily. Strength and endurance conditioning. Combat against wooden posts. Payless. Practice fights with wooden weapons. Diet of barley and beans for bulk. Discipline. Absolute obedience enforced through whipping for disobedience, shackling, solitary confinement, death for serious infractions. Oath. Gladiators swear sacramentum gladiatorium, I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword. This oath binds them to accept whatever their master requires. Medical care. Surprisingly good because gladiators are valuable. Skilled physicians, some gladiators' doctors become famous, surgical treatment for wounds, nutritious diet to maintain muscle, rest and recovery time. But care is for the investment, not the person. Some volunteers. Not all gladiators are slaves. Some free men, auctorati, voluntarily enter gladiator schools seeking money. Successful gladiators earn significant prizes. Fame, popular, gladiators are celebrities. Glory, warrior culture values, combat prowess. Escape from worse circumstances, poverty, debt. They sign contracts binding them to service. They're treated slightly better than slave gladiators, but still subject to ludus discipline. Women, gladiators. Yes, they exist, though rare and controversial. Female gladiators, gladiatrices, fight occasionally, usually for novelty value, considered scandalous. Respectable women don't fight. Sometimes wealthy women seeking thrill, sometimes slaves forced to fight Emperor Domitian, features female gladiators in his games. Eventually, Emperor Septimius Severus, 200 AD, bans female gladiators, considering them undignified. The Brna, naumachii, naval battles. For extra spectacle, emperors occasionally stage mock naval battles. In natural bodies of water, Lake Fucine, Claudius, 52, AD, 19,000 fighters on real warships. Tiber flooding creates temporary lakes. In amphitheaters, Colosseum can be flooded for small naval demonstrations. Special naumachii basins built near Rome. These are incredibly expensive productions, requiring engineering to flood arenas, real or scaled ships, thousands of fighters, usually condemned prisoners, elaborate staging. The battles are genuine. Prisoners fight to death, recreating famous naval engagements. Water turns red with blood. Psychology of the games. Why do Romans love this? Multiple factors. Political. Bread and circuses keep masses content. Free games plus free grain equals pacified population. Social reinforcement. Watching criminals and slaves die reinforces hierarchy. Message: obey or suffer. Military culture. Rome is warrior society. Games celebrate martial virtues, courage, discipline, willingness to die. Desensitization. Violence is everywhere in daily life. Games just concentrate and ritualize what's routine. Religious. Games originate as funeral rites, blood offerings to dead. Religious element persists. Entertainment. Simply, it's exciting. Modern objections are irrelevant to Romans who see nothing wrong. Vicarious experience. Crowd experiences intensity, fear, excitement, relief, safely. It's communal catharsis. Status. Sponsoring games brings prestige. Bigger, bloodier games equal higher status. Modern humans struggle to understand how civilized people could enjoy this. But Romans would struggle to understand our entertainment. Realistic violence in movies and video games, boxing and MMA fighting, even American football's chronic brain injuries. Cultural context determines what's acceptable. Decline and fall. The empire crumbles. The crisis begins. 3rd century collapse. The 3rd century AD nearly destroys Rome. Between 235 to 284 AD, 50 emperors. In 50 years, most murdered or killed in battle. Constant civil war between rival claimants, barbarianous invasions, overwhelming frontiers, economic collapse from currency debasement and trade disruption, plague, killing millions, cities abandoned. As population flees, the empire fragments into 3 parts, 260 to 274 AD, Gallic Empire, Gaul, Britain, Spain, Palmyrene Empire, Syria, Egypt, Asia Minor, Roman Empire proper, Italy and surroundings. Only Aurelian, 270 to 275 AD, reunites the empire. Diocletian, 284 to 305 AD, stabilizes situation through radical reforms, dividing empire into administrative units, creating tetrarchy, 4 co-emperors, fixing prices unsuccessfully, doubling army size, increasing taxation dramatically, expanding bureaucracy. These reforms save empire temporarily, but create new problems. Constantine and Christianity. Constantine, 306 to 337 AD, wins civil war and makes momentous changes. Religious transformation. Converts to Christianity, 312 AD. Edict of Milan, 313 AD, legalizes Christianity, favors Christians with appointments and funding, calls Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, to resolve theological disputes. Within century, Christianity transforms from persecuted cult to state religion. Emperor Theodosius I, 379 to 395 AD, makes Christianity official, banning pagan worship. New capital. Constantine founds Constantinople, 330 AD, on site of Greek city Byzantium. This new Rome becomes Eastern capital, eventually overshadowing Rome itself. Military changes. Mobile field armies replace static frontier defense. Barbarization of army accelerates, recruiting Germanic tribes. Borders become more permeable. The permanent division emperor Theodosius I dies in 395 AD, dividing empire between sons. Western Roman Empire. Honorius, capital, Milan, later Ravenna. Eastern Roman Empire. Arcadius, capital, Constantinople. This division becomes permanent. The two halves develop separately. West, poorer, less urbanized, constant barbarian pressure, political instability, economic decline, eventually falls, 476 AD. East, wealthier, more urbanized, Greek-speaking and culturally Greek, stronger defenses, survives as Byzantine Empire until 1453 AD. Barbarian invasions, barbarian, non-Roman peoples, pressure increases. Visigoths. Flee Huns, seek refuge in empire, 376 AD. Rebel against mistreatment, defeat. Roman army at Adrianople, 378 AD, killing Emperor Valens, sack Rome, 410 AD, under Alaric, first time in 800 years, Rome is captured. Vandals. Cross frozen Rhine, 406 AD, rampage through Gaul and Spain, cross to North Africa, establish kingdom, sack Rome, 455 AD, more thoroughly than Visigoths, cut off grain supply to Rome. Huns. Nomadic warriors from Central Asia, under Attila, 434 to 453 AD, devastate eastern provinces, invade Italy, 452 AD, Only luck and disease stopped them from sacking Rome. Empire fragments after Attila's death. Others, Burgundians, Franks, Saxons, Angles, settle in Gaul and Britain. Ostrogoths conquer Italy after Western Empire falls. Countless smaller groups carve territories. The final emperor, in 476 AD, Germanic general Odoacer, deposes last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, ironically named for Rome's legendary founder and first emperor. Odoacer doesn't claim title of emperor. Instead, he returns imperial regalia to Constantinople, declaring the Western position defunct. He rules Italy as king under nominal Eastern authority. This date, 476 AD, is traditionally marked as the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Why did Rome fall? Historians debate endlessly. Major theories: lead poisoning. Chronic exposure debilitated elite class, causing cognitive decline in leadership, reduced fertility in upper classes, behavioral problems in emperors. Christianity undermined traditional Roman values, pacifism versus military glory, focus on afterlife versus earthly empire, church versus state loyalty, resources diverted to churches versus military. But Eastern Empire is equally Christian and survives 1,000 more years, so this can't be complete explanation. Economic collapse, currency debasement, destroying monetary system, taxation driving people from cities, trade disruption from warfare, loss of grain supply from North Africa, military decline, barbarization reducing army effectiveness and loyalty, inability to defend vast frontiers, civil wars consuming resources, loss of military ethos among citizens, overextension, empire simply too large to govern effectively with ancient technology, communication and transportation limitations make central control impossible. Climate change. Late Antique Little Ice Age, 536 to 660 AD, brings cooler temperatures, crop failures, famine, population decline. But this occurs after Western fall, though earlier climate shifts might have contributed. Disease. Repeated plagues, Antonine, Cyprian, others, kill millions, weaken economy, disrupt agriculture, and reduce military manpower. Barbarian invasions. Simply overwhelmed by numbers, Rome can defeat individual groups but cannot handle simultaneous pressure on all frontiers. Most likely, all of above combining. Rome doesn't fall from single cause but from system-wide failure across multiple domains simultaneously. Was it really a fall? Modern historians question the fall narrative, transformation rather than collapse. Roman institutions continue under Germanic kings. Roman law persists and evolves. Latin remains language of learning. Christian church preserves Roman culture. Eastern Empire continues for millennium. Gradual change. No single moment of destruction. Instead, decades of transition as power shifts from Roman emperors to Germanic kings. Regional variation. Some areas experience dramatic change, others barely notice. Life for ordinary people continues much as before. Same landlords, different titles. Cultural continuity. Romans don't disappear. They become subjects of new kingdoms, gradually blending with conquerors over generations. Perhaps better described as transformation than fall. But for contemporaries, it must have felt apocalyptic. Eternal Rome brought low. Conclusion: why you wouldn't survive. After examining every aspect of Roman life, the conclusion is clear. Modern humans would struggle desperately to survive in ancient Rome. You lack necessary hardness. Romans endure conditions that would break us. Chronic pain from untreated injuries and diseases,
constant hunger from inadequate nutrition, exposure to extreme heat and cold, exhaustion from endless labor, violence as routine rather than exceptional.
They develop psychological toughness from necessity. We've been softened by comfort. You lack disease. Resistance Romans have some immunity to local pathogens from constant exposure. You have none. Dis, you'd be lost immediately, making fatal mistakes from ignorance. You lack social position. Romans are born into social networks, family, patrons, clients, guild memberships. These networks provide employment, housing, protection, information, support during hardship. As a stranger with no connections, you'd have nothing, no one to turn to, no one to help, no safety net. You lack psychological armor. Romans are desensitized to violence, suffering, and death. They see these daily and develop psychological defenses. You'd be traumatized constantly. Public executions, casual cruelty, child labor and abuse, slavery's horrors, death of so many children, brutal inequality, complete lack of justice for most. The psychological toll would be unbearable. You'd die from, most likely, waterborne disease, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, food poisoning, lead poisoning, slower but inevitable, infectious disease, tuberculosis, pneumonia, violence, murder, execution, warfare, building collapse or fire, starvation, childbirth complications, if female, work accident. Timeline. Week 1. Disease from contaminated water. Food. Month 1. Violence or accident if you survive disease. Year 1. 1. Chronic diseases, malnutrition, or lead poisoning. Decade 1. Cancer, organ failure, or the many accumulated insults to your body finally proving fatal. Very few modern humans would live to 30, Roman average. Almost none would reach 50. But Romans survived. Here's the remarkable thing. Despite everything, Romans survived, thrived, and built civilization's greatest empire. They lived, loved, laughed, created art, wrote poetry, formed friendships, raised children, found joy despite circumstances we find unimaginable. The human capacity for adaptation and resilience is extraordinary. Romans weren't superhuman, just adapted to their reality. This raises a sobering question. If we modern humans were placed in their situation, would we develop the same toughness? Or are we irreversibly softened by our comfortable existence? Final thoughts. Ancient Rome was simultaneously magnificent and terrible. Architectural wonders built by slave labor, legal systems protecting only the powerful, engineering marvels delivering poisoned water, literature and philosophy amid brutal entertainment, military glory built on endless warfare, urban sophistication covering desperate poverty. Rome conquered the world but couldn't conquer basic human problems: disease, inequality, violence, death. 2 millennia later, we've solved some problems, sanitation, medicine, labor rights, but still struggle with others: inequality, violence, injustice. Rome reminds us that civilization is fragile. Progress isn't inevitable. Regression is always possible. But also, human resilience is remarkable. Despite impossible odds, people persevere, create, and find meaning. That's Rome's true legacy, not marble monuments, but the indomitable human spirit that built them despite everything. You wouldn't survive ancient Rome, but Romans did. And that, perhaps, is the most amazing thing of all. Epilogue. Rome's lessons for today. Rome fell, but never truly died. Its influence persists in legal systems. Modern Western law traces to Roman precedents. Languages. Romance languages, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, descend from Latin. Engineering. Concrete, arches, aqueducts, roads still inspire. Government. Republican and imperial models influence modern states. Culture. Literature, philosophy, art continue to resonate. Calendar. Julian calendar basis for Gregorian calendar we use. Architecture. Classical style dominates monumental buildings worldwide. Rome's ghost haunts Western civilization. Every nation calls itself New Rome. Every empire compares itself to Rome. We study Rome not just as history, but as warning and inspiration. Warning. Even the mightiest empires fall. Inspiration. Even in hardship, humans achieve greatness. The question isn't whether you could survive ancient Rome. The question is, what does our comfort say about us? Have we grown soft? Would we survive if our civilization collapsed? And more importantly, are we building something that will last as long as Rome? Or are we repeating Rome's mistakes? These questions have no easy answers, but Rome teaches us to ask them. That's why Rome matters. Not because it was perfect, it was deeply flawed, but because it was human. Glorious and brutal, wise and foolish, innovative and conservative, generous and cruel. Rome was us, magnified. And studying Rome means studying ourselves. Welcome to ancient Rome. You wouldn't survive it, but understanding it might help us survive our own age. The end. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for new videos.